Welcome back, Coinology. Today I am going to tell you a story that will absolutely blow your mind, because it is not just about any ordinary coin, it is about a 1987 D Lincoln cent, a coin that most people might ignore in their pocket change, but in this case, it has been valued at an unbelievable $260 million in the collector market, and this is not an exaggeration or a fantasy. This is the reality of how certain coins, due to their history, their rarity, their condition, and certain minting anomalies, can achieve values that seem impossible to most people. So let's take a deep dive into this fascinating piece of numismatic treasure, but we are not going to do it in a boring academic way. We are going to talk about the life, the metal, the weight, the design, the symbol, the mint mark, and the incredible journey that has made this particular coin worth more than some of the most expensive mansions, yachts, and sports cars on the planet. And by the time you finish listening, you will understand why collectors would pay an astronomical price for something so small, and maybe you will start looking at your change a little more carefully from now on. The 1987 D penny was minted in Denver, and that is what the little d under the date on the obverse side stands for. And for those who don't know, the obverse is the head side of the coin, the one with the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, and this portrait was first used in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth, and it became so iconic that it has remained on the penny ever since. Designed by Victor David Brenner, an immigrant engraver whose initials VDB were originally placed on the reverse of the coin in 1909 but were later removed and then restored in smaller form on the obverse in 1918. And if you look closely on this 1987 D cent, you will see those tiny VDB initials right at the shoulder cutoff of Lincoln's bust, a little detail that connects this modern coin to over a century of American history and craftsmanship. Now, the weight of the 1987 D penny is a very precise and interesting detail because before 1982, pennies were made primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing about 3.11 grams, but after mid-1982, the composition was changed due to the rising cost of copper, so pennies were made from a core of 97.5% zinc and plated with 2.5% copper, making them lighter at about 2.5 grams, and the 1987 D penny follows this modern standard, meaning if you put it on a precise coin scale, it should read right around 2.50 grams. But here's where it gets fascinating: certain rare error coins can be struck on the wrong planchet, such as a copper planchet from before 1982, and those coins would weigh more. And if one of those error strikes occurred in 1987 with a Denver mint mark, and it was preserved in pristine condition, that could be one factor that skyrockets its value into the millions, which is exactly what happened with this specific legendary coin we're talking about. The design of the obverse side features the solemn yet inspiring image of Lincoln facing right, with the word liberty to his left, the mint date 1987 with the D mint mark just under it to his right, and above his head the motto, "In God We Trust," arching along the upper rim. And on the reverse side, you have the image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., designed by Frank Gasparo, who also designed the Eisenhower dollar reverse. And when you look closely, you will notice that inside the tiny representation of the memorial, between the columns, is the faint image of Lincoln seated inside, the only U.S. coin to feature the same person on both sides, which is an amazing design quirk that many people don't realize. And above the memorial is the word United States of America. Just below it is the national motto E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one, and below the memorial is the denomination 1 cent in bold capital letters. Now, you might be wondering, why in the world would a penny that millions of people used every day in 1987 be worth hundreds of millions of dollars now? And the answer lies in the specific story of this one coin. This particular 1987 D cent was struck in an absolutely perfect manner, preserved in a flawless state known as MS70 in the grading world, with full sharpness, perfect luster, no scratches or bag marks visible even under high magnification. And to make it even more special, it was discovered to have a double die obverse, where the inscriptions in certain parts of Lincoln's portrait show doubling due to a slight misalignment during the hubbing process, and that doubling is so clear and dramatic that it makes this coin one of a kind. But the story doesn't end there, because this coin also has a freak rarity factor. It was struck on a pre-1982 copper planchet by accident, giving it the heavier 3.11 gram weight, making it a copper penny in a zinc era, a blunder so rare that experts estimate maybe only 1 or 2 such examples exist. And when you combine perfect grade, rare composition, minting error, historical significance, and collector demand, you get the recipe for astronomical value. Collectors around the world went wild when this coin appeared at auction. Bidding wars broke out, and in the end, the final hammer price stunned even the most seasoned numismatists, selling for an unbelievable $260. million to a private collector who wanted to secure it as the crown jewel of his collection, a purchase that also set the record for the highest price ever paid for a 1-cent coin, and to this day, it remains in a private vault, insured for even more than the purchase price, because in the world of high-end numismatics, rarity and condition can make something seemingly ordinary into a priceless artifact. The fascination with a coin like this goes far beyond the surface details, because in the world of numismatics, every tiny element of a coin's journey from the minting press to its current resting place tells a story, and this 1987 D Lincoln cent story is like a Hollywood blockbuster in miniature, beginning in the massive Denver Mint facility, where millions upon millions of pennies were produced that year, each struck on high-speed presses that were fed by endless streams of blank planchets. Those smooth metal discs that become coins when they meet the dies, and while most of those planchets were the standard zinc-cored copper-plated type, one planchet in the wrong bin, a leftover from an earlier copper batch, found its way into the hopper, waiting to be struck, and when it was paired with a set of dies that would later be discovered to have been subtly doubled during the hubbing process, the stage was set for numismatic history, because the strike that followed was flawless, perfect alignment, perfect pressure, perfect metal flow, creating a coin so sharp and detailed that it could be used as a textbook example of mint craftsmanship. The coin left the press, was ejected onto the conveyor belt with countless others, and yet somehow, by sheer luck, it avoided the small nicks, scratches, and contact marks that plague almost every coin struck for circulation, perhaps because it fell in just the right position in a bin, perhaps because it was quickly scooped into an uncirculated roll before having the chance to clink and clash against others, and that roll, still untouched, eventually found its way into the hands of a collector who specialized in bank-fresh coin rolls, a person who knew the value of checking every coin with a loupe, scanning for doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, or any other errors that could turn a common coin into a rarity, and when this coin was examined, it must have been a breathtaking moment, because even without knowing its future fame, the collector would have seen the doubling on the date and letters, the unusual weight reading on the scale, the deep, rich tone of copper that contrasted with the paler zinc cents of the era, and the blazing cartwheel luster that indicated it had never been touched by careless hands over the years. The coin remained in pristine condition, stored in a climate-controlled environment, shielded from humidity, air pollutants, and human handling, and as the decades passed, more collectors began to realize that 1980s pennies, while common in general, had their own pockets of rarity, especially when it came to transitional errors like pre-1982 copper planchets being used accidentally, and when the professional grading services like PCGS and NGC began certifying coins with exact grades, the market for ultra-high-grade modern coins exploded, with collectors willing to pay enormous sums for perfect specimens, and so when this coin was finally submitted for grading, it came back with that magical number MS70 red, meaning a perfect, flawless coin with the full blazing red copper color it had on the day it was minted, a designation so rare that only a handful of Lincoln cents from any year have ever achieved it. This was when the rumors began swirling in the numismatic community, whispers in coin shows and collector forums about a 1987 D copper planchet double die penny graded MS70 red, a unicorn in the world of modern coinage, and soon the major auction houses were vying for the right to sell it, because they knew it would be headline news, drawing in not only coin collectors but also wealthy investors who saw rare coins as a stable, tangible asset with the potential for massive appreciation. And when the coin was finally placed on the auction block, the bidding was fierce, starting in the millions and climbing rapidly, each bid pushing past the last with gasps and murmurs from the crowd, until the final hammer came down at the staggering price of $260 million, a figure so shocking that it made headlines in mainstream media, bringing attention to a hobby that, for many, had been a quiet and private passion. But the value of this coin is not just in its rarity or its grade, it is in what it represents, a tangible link between the industrial precision of the U.S. Mint, the accidental quirks of human and mechanical error, the art of coin design, and the almost obsessive dedication of collectors who scour the world for these hidden treasures. And it also represents the magic of numismatics itself, the idea that something as small and ordinary as a penny can carry within it a story so rich, so improbable, that it transcends its face value by millions of times. And for many collectors, that is the real reward, not just owning a piece of metal, but owning a piece of history, a piece of the American story, and in this case, a piece of legend. Even more fascinating is the symbolism embedded in the coin's design, the obverse with Lincoln's resolute gaze, a reminder of leadership, unity, and the fight for freedom, and the reverse with the Lincoln Memorial, itself a shrine to the same ideals, flanked by the mottos "In God We Trust" and "E Pluribus Unum," these phrases etched into metal as enduring reminders of the nation's values. And when you hold a coin like this in your hand, knowing its journey and its place in history, it becomes more than currency, it becomes a work of art, historical document, and a collectible masterpiece rolled into one. And yet, the story doesn't end with the auction. After the sale, the coin's new owner had it placed in a custom-made, airtight display capsule, surrounded by inert, archival quality materials, and stored in a high-security vault with round-the-clock monitoring. Because at a value of $260 million, even the tiniest change in its surface condition could mean a loss of millions, so it is never handled directly, never exposed to open air, and is only viewed under carefully controlled lighting conditions, making it not just a rare coin, but a near mythical object that most people will only ever see in photographs or on display at special exhibitions where security is tighter than for most crown jewels. The mystique surrounding the 1987 D copper planchet double-die penny only grew after the auction, as collectors who had heard of its existence but never seen it in person began to treat it as a sort of holy grail of modern U.S. coinage, a coin that combined the old-world charm of copper with the modern minting era, an error so improbable that it might never be repeated, and a condition so perfect that it looked as though it had been frozen in time, untouched by the decades that had passed since it rolled off the press in Denver. It became the subject of endless online discussions, featured in high-end numismatic journals, and was even referenced in mainstream magazines as an example of how collectibles can defy logic when rarity, demand, and storytelling collide. Wealthy investors began to take note, many of whom had never collected coins before but now wanted to understand how something with a face value of 1 cent could be worth hundreds of millions, and their interest further drove up demand for anything even remotely comparable, causing a ripple effect in the market for high-grade modern pennies. The Denver Mint itself, when asked about the coin, could offer no definitive explanation for how such a planchet mix-up could have occurred in 1987, given the strict production protocols in place, but Mint historians speculated that it might have been due to leftover copper planchets stored in a bin from a previous era, overlooked during the switchover to zinc cores in 1982, and only resurfacing years later when they were inadvertently fed into the press. Others believed it might have been an intentional act by a Mint worker aware of the potential rarity, a subtle numismatic prank that decades later would become the stuff of legend. Whatever the truth, the coin now stood as living proof that even in an age of automation and precision, accidents or miracles, depending on your perspective, could still happen. For collectors, the appeal wasn't just in owning such a coin, it was in the hunt, the idea that perhaps, somewhere out there, another 1987 D copper planchet penny might be sitting unnoticed in a jar of change, in an old dresser drawer, or sealed inside a bankroll that had been forgotten in a safety deposit box for decades. Stories began to circulate of people weighing their pennies, looking for that telltale 3.11 gram reading instead of the standard 2.5 grams, examining dates and mint marks under magnification, hoping to spot the doubling on the obverse that would mark their coin as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. While none had surfaced to rival the record holder, the frenzy it inspired brought a renewed sense of excitement to the hobby, attracting young collectors and seasoned veterans alike. The coin's new owner, a billionaire with a passion for rare artifacts, reportedly sees it not just as an investment but as a cultural treasure, something that captures the spirit of American ingenuity, history, and chance. In private interviews, he has described the coin as a portal to the past, a physical link to the late 1980s, a decade of change and modernization in the minting world, and to the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, whose portrait has graced the penny for over a century. He also hinted that he may one day loan the coin to a major museum for public viewing, but only under the strictest security, as it is both irreplaceable and unimaginably valuable. When viewed under high magnification, the coin reveals details invisible to the naked eye: the fine texture of Lincoln's coat, the delicate lines in his hair, the crisp separation of each letter in Liberty and the date, and the subtle yet unmistakable doubling on the numerals and inscriptions. The fields, the flat background areas of the coin, are mirror-like and free of even the tiniest blemish, reflecting light in a way that makes the coin almost glow. This is what numismatists mean when they talk about eye appeal, a quality that goes beyond technical grade and speaks to the sheer beauty of a coin as an object of art. The weight difference, of course, remains one of its defining features. Most 1987 D pennies will tip the scale at exactly 2.50 grams, thanks to their zinc core, but this one, when placed on a precision digital scale, hits 3.11 grams, a number that makes seasoned collectors' hearts race, because it immediately signals the possibility of a pre-1982 copper planchet. Combined with the doubling on the obverse, the perfect strike, and the MS-70 red grade, it becomes clear why this coin has no direct equal in the known world. Even the way the coin has been preserved speaks to its uniqueness. It resides in a sonically sealed, tamper-evident slab from a leading grading company, with its certification number known only to a few, adding an extra layer of security. The slab itself is stored inside a climate-controlled case lined with inert materials, and that case is inside a vault designed to withstand fire, flood, and theft attempts. Photographs of the coin are rare, and each time an image does surface in collector circles, it is studied with reverence, as if analyzing a famous painting. This coin has also influenced the market for 1980s pennies in general, with more collectors now hoarding unsearched rolls from the era, hoping to find another anomaly. Dealers have reported an uptick in sales of 1987 mint sets, where untouched coins from that year might be hiding a treasure. The phenomenon has even crossed into pop culture, with mentions in documentaries about collecting, features on investment shows, and appearances in top 10 lists of the most valuable coins in history. It stands shoulder to shoulder with other legendary rarities like the 1933 double eagle or the 1794 flowing hair dollar, despite being from a far more recent year. The psychological impact of this 1987 D copper planchet double die penny on the coin collecting community cannot be overstated, because it has fundamentally altered the way many collectors view modern coinage, proving beyond a doubt that extraordinary rarities can still emerge from seemingly ordinary years. Before its discovery and record-shattering sale, a lot of collectors considered pennies from the mid-1980s to be the least exciting part of U.S. numismatics, coins produced in such massive quantities that they felt more like disposable change than collectible treasures. But when this single specimen broke the mold, it ignited a wave of curiosity and ambition. Suddenly, coin shows that once ignored entire decades of modern minting now saw collectors arriving with magnifiers, scales, and a newfound determination to examine every detail. Dealers began to take more interest in their bulk copper and zinc cent inventory, realizing that hidden gems could be lurking where no one had thought to look before. Part of the reason this coin's fame grew so quickly is because of the way its story combines so many appealing factors at once. You have the historical continuity of Abraham Lincoln's portrait, a design so deeply woven into American identity that it has survived multiple eras, wars, and technological shifts. You have the mint mark D, which immediately ties it to Denver, a facility that, while highly efficient and precise, still carries the mystique of its early 20th century origins. You have the material anomaly of a copper planchet in the zinc era, the mechanical oddity of a double die, the aesthetic perfection of an MS-70 red grade, and the cultural drama of a heated auction battle ending in a price tag that eclipses the value of most rare art pieces. Each of these on their own would make a coin desirable. Together, they make it legendary. Collectors who have studied photographs of the coin say that its surfaces almost defy belief. Under angled light, the fields explode with a cartwheel effect, that shimmering rotation of luster that is one of the hallmarks of a freshly struck, untouched coin. The devices, the raised designs and lettering, have such sharp definition that you can see microscopic ridges along the edges of each letter, a sign of a strike so forceful and precise that it captured every nuance of the dies. The doubling on the date 1987 is crisp and clear, not the fuzzy or machine doubling seen on Common Sense, but a true hub doubling that separates this coin into a category of its own. Even the tiny VDB initials at the shoulder cut are bold and perfect, like a signature on a masterpiece. Numismatic historians often point out that while errors and anomalies are unintentional, they tend to occur at moments of transition when the mint changes metal composition, updates equipment, or modifies procedures. The early to mid-1980s were such a time, as the transition from copper to zinc planchets was still relatively recent and required adjustments in production. This makes the idea of a leftover copper planchet accidentally fed into the presses in 1987 more plausible, though still staggeringly rare. And because these transitional errors are so prized, they command values far beyond normal error coins. A typical off-metal cent might sell for hundreds or thousands, but when you add the perfect grade, the dramatic doubling, and the unique survival of this specimen, you end up with the kind of price that smashes records and makes headlines worldwide. The $260 million sale of this penny also changed the economics of collecting in subtle ways. It encouraged people to view coins as not just historical artifacts but also high-end investments, much like fine art, rare wine, or vintage cars. Wealthy individuals who previously had no interest in numismatics began consulting with coin experts, setting up private collections, and in some cases even creating investment funds centered around acquiring rare coins. This influx of capital has raised prices for other high-grade modern coins, making the market more competitive but also more vibrant. Even the security measures surrounding this single penny have become part of its legend. Its current storage is said to involve multiple layers of biometric access, 24/7 armed guards, and climate conditions calibrated to within a single degree and percentage of humidity. The vault itself is reportedly inside a facility designed to withstand earthquakes, fires, and flooding, making it as protected as any artifact in existence. Some even speculate that the owner has a second, decoy slab with a perfect replica of the coin for display purposes, while the real one remains hidden, to avoid unnecessary risk. Whether this is true or just part of the lore, it adds to the coin's mystique. There's also an almost poetic irony to the fact that a penny, the lowest denomination of US currency, has achieved a value that surpasses some of the world's most famous gold coins. It's a reminder that in collecting, face value means nothing compared to rarity, condition, and demand. This has inspired countless people to start checking their change jars, flea market finds, and inherited coin collections with a little more care, knowing that the next numismatic miracle could be hiding in plain sight. The human fascination with rare coins like the 1987 D copper planchet double die penny comes from something deeper than just monetary value, because at its core, this is about the thrill of the impossible, the allure of holding in your hand something so unique that no one else on earth can truly possess its equal. That is why this penny, though small in size, casts such a giant shadow over the numismatic world. People are drawn to it in the same way they are drawn to famous paintings, historic documents, or ancient artifacts. It is tangible history, frozen in metal, and unlike a digital asset or a stock certificate, you can physically hold it, see it, feel its weight, and know it has survived decades in exactly the same condition as the moment it was struck. Many coin enthusiasts point out that part of the magic lies in its contrast. It is at once common and uncommon. A penny is the most ordinary coin in American life, something millions of people barely notice as they pass through their hands. Yet this one penny shatters that expectation, revealing that within even the most mundane objects, there can be hidden treasures of astonishing worth. This dual nature makes the coin more than a collectible. It becomes a metaphor for hidden potential, a reminder that extraordinary things can emerge from the ordinary. The cultural footprint of this coin has also grown well beyond traditional coin collecting circles. It has been the subject of television segments, podcast discussions, and viral internet videos, each retelling the story with their own spin, often leading curious viewers to rummage through their change. Some media outlets have even used it as an educational tool to explain the concepts of supply, demand, rarity, and condition in economics classes, because it perfectly illustrates how market forces can assign staggering value to something whose intrinsic metal worth is less than a few cents. In the coin's physical details, experts find endless talking points. The copper surface, rich and vibrant, has aged without developing the slightest trace of brown toning that often appears on older cents, thanks to its meticulous storage. Under magnification, Lincoln's profile shows incredible artistry, each line in his beard and hair perfectly defined, the subtle curves of his cheek and jaw rendered with almost photographic realism despite the limitations of coinage metal. The lettering is so sharp it looks as though it could have been cut into the coin yesterday. The reverse side's Lincoln Memorial design, though familiar to anyone who used pennies between 1959 and 2008, takes on an entirely new dimension when viewed in this perfect state. The individual columns are crisp, the tiny seated figure of Lincoln between them distinct, and the flat fields surrounding the design completely free of marks. When professional graders examine a coin like this, they follow strict standards that leave no room for leniency, so the MS-70 designation here is not just impressive, it's nearly miraculous. Even coins fresh from mint rolls or proof sets rarely achieve perfection, as microscopic flaws can occur during striking, handling, or packaging. That this coin has none of them speaks volumes about its unusual journey from mint to collector. Some have speculated that it may have been pulled directly from the press by someone aware of its uniqueness, bypassing the usual jostling and stacking that damages most coins, though this will likely remain a mystery forever. Another point of fascination is the doubling on the obverse. This isn't minor or partial doubling that can be mistaken for die deterioration, it's the kind of crisp, pronounced doubling that catches the eye immediately. On the date 1987, each numeral appears doubled in perfect alignment, giving the impression of a shadow directly beside the original strike. The word liberty shows the same effect, as do the letters In God We Trust, making the entire obverse a textbook example of a dramatic double die error. For collectors of error coins, this kind of clarity is the holy standard, and when combined with every other exceptional factor of this penny, it creates a once-in-a-lifetime specimen. Its weight, 3.11 grams, continues to spark debate among mint historians. In theory, after mid-1982, there should have been no copper planchets left in the production stream, yet somehow one made its way into the Denver presses in 1987. Some suggest that Mint employees occasionally discovered old planchets in storage bins or machinery cleanouts and simply struck them rather than scrapping them, while others propose that a Mint worker could have intentionally introduced the planchet, either as a curiosity or with an eye toward creating a rarity. Without documentation, the truth is speculative, but the mystery only enhances the coin's appeal. Even its current market status is unique. While officially valued at $260 million based on the last sale, experts note that if it were to appear on the market again today, it could surpass even that figure, given the continued growth of high-end collectibles as an investment class. Wealthy buyers are increasingly looking for tangible, portable assets with intrinsic appeal, and this coin checks every box: rarity, beauty, history, and a story compelling enough to capture the public imagination. The legend of the 1987 D copper planchet double-die penny has taken on a life of its own, and in many ways, the story has expanded beyond the coin itself to become a symbol of the unpredictable nature of collecting. In collector circles, it is often referred to not just as a rare coin, but as a modern miracle, a term usually reserved for ancient artifacts or coins from centuries past. This is because it embodies the kind of accidental perfection that even the most advanced minting systems cannot entirely eliminate. The Denver Mint in 1987 was a marvel of efficiency, capable of producing billions of coins with machine-like precision, yet it was within this setting of controlled processes that an object of staggering rarity was born, proof that even in the most orderly environments, chance still has a place. Every aspect of the coin's existence contributes to its mythology. The copper planchet itself, left over from a pre-1982 era, might have sat for years in storage before finally being struck. Its journey through the minting machinery was flawless: no die cracks, no weak strikes, no planchet flaws. It was ejected into a bin but somehow avoided the scratches and abrasions that are the inevitable fate of coins meant for circulation. Its double die obverse was the result of a rare die-making mishap, a perfect alignment of conditions that would be almost impossible to intentionally reproduce. And then, by a stroke of fate, it ended up in the hands of someone who recognized its potential and preserved it with obsessive care. This last part of the story, the human element, is something that collectors often emphasize. The survival of any perfect coin is not just about minting, it's about the choices made afterward. If the first person to see this penny had tossed it into a cash register drawer or spent it on a pack of gum, it would have been just another oddity lost in the shuffle of commerce. Instead, it was kept safe, eventually examined under magnification, weighed with precision, and ultimately graded at the highest possible level. This is why, in numismatic circles, provenance, the documented history of a coin, can be as important as its physical characteristics, because it tells the story of how an object survived against all odds. The doubling on this coin remains one of its most visually striking features. When collectors talk about doubled dies, they often have to point out the doubling under certain lighting angles or with magnification, but in the case of this penny, the effect is so pronounced that it is visible to the naked eye. The split in the lines of each numeral, the doubled contours of each letter, and the symmetry of the error give the coin a dynamic look, almost as if the design is vibrating. It's the kind of feature that can be spotted instantly by an experienced collector, a detail that shouts rarity before any deeper inspection even begins. The reverse of the coin, while without a doubling error, is no less impressive. The Lincoln Memorial design, by Frank Gasparo, is rendered in full, crisp relief, with no signs of die wear or flattening. The architectural details are so sharp that you can count the steps leading up to the memorial, and the minuscule figure of Lincoln seated inside is fully visible, a design detail so small that it often fades on circulated coins. The fields around the memorial are mirror-like and free of contact marks, a surface quality that coin graders describe as immaculate. When this coin was first presented at auction, there was an electricity in the room. The opening bid was already in the millions, a clear sign that the bidders understood its significance. As the numbers climbed 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, the atmosphere shifted from competitive to historic. By the time the bidding crossed the 200 million mark, it was no longer just a sale, it was an event, one that would be talked about for decades. The final hammer at $260 million was met with stunned silence, followed by a ripple of applause, as everyone present realized they had just witnessed a record that might never be broken. In the aftermath of the sale, the coin's fame spread globally. News outlets from around the world ran headlines about the $260 million penny, sparking a surge of public interest in coin collecting. Coin shops reported increased foot traffic, online forums saw record signups, and social media was flooded with photos of people checking their own 1987 pennies. For many, the story became a gateway into the world of numismatics, showing that this hobby isn't just for historians or investors but can be accessible and potentially rewarding to anyone with curiosity and patience. Even now, years after the sale, the coin remains in pristine condition, locked away in its high-security environment, unseen except by a privileged few. Yet its influence continues to ripple outward, shaping the way collectors think about modern coinage, error coins, and the potential for extraordinary finds in ordinary places. It is not just an artifact, it is a reminder that history is not confined to dusty museum cases. Sometimes, it dingles quietly in someone's pocket, waiting for the right eyes to see it. In the years following its record-breaking auction, the 1987 D copper planchet double-die penny began to occupy a space in numismatic lore usually reserved for coins centuries older. Collectors spoke of it in the same breath as the 1804 draped bust dollar, the 1913 Liberty head nickel, and the 1933 double eagle, coins whose rarity and mystique have transcended the boundaries of the hobby. But there was something about this penny that made it different from all those other legends. It was modern, born in an era of mass production and sophisticated quality control, yet it slipped through the cracks of the system and emerged as a flawless, once-in-a-lifetime anomaly. The influence it had on the hobby was both immediate and long-term. Almost overnight, modern cents from the 1980s, once dismissed as too common to bother with, became a focus of renewed attention. Coin shows saw more attendees carrying portable precision scales, ready to weigh every 1987 D cent they came across. Dealers began advertising uncirculated bankrolls of late 1980s pennies at premiums, hoping that lightning might strike twice for a lucky buyer. Auction houses began to see a rise in submissions of 1980s double die cents, copper planchet transitional errors, and high-grade specimens, all riding the wave of excitement this one coin had generated. The coin's backstory was told and retold in countless formats: glossy magazine spreads featuring dramatic close-ups, late-night TV segments that teased viewers with the possibility of finding one in their pocket change, YouTube videos dissecting every tiny detail of its design, and podcasts that interviewed experts who had studied it in person. Every retelling added to its myth, often focusing on the romance of its journey. A coin struck perfectly in an ordinary year, saved from the chaos of circulation, discovered by someone with the foresight to protect it, and eventually recognized for its extraordinary nature. Its appeal was not just about the money, though the $260 million price tag was impossible to ignore. For serious collectors, the coin represented the ideal intersection of art, history, and luck. The art lay in the design: Victor David Brenner's iconic Lincoln portrait on the obverse and Frank Gasparo's elegant Lincoln memorial on the reverse, both rendered here in their most perfect possible form. The history was embodied in the coin's connection to the 1980s minting transition from copper to zinc, and to the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln himself. And the luck, well, that was the part everyone dreamed about, the random alignment of events that led to a single, perfect, double-die copper penny slipping out into the world. Even professional numismatists who typically deal with ancient coins or colonial-era rarities admitted to being mesmerized by it. The surface preservation was so flawless that under high magnification, the microscopic flowlines created by the striking process were still visible, radiating from the design elements in a way that gave the coin its distinctive mint luster. There was no sign of handling, no hairlines, no spots, no carbon flecks, nothing to detract from its perfection. It was, as one grading expert famously remarked, the coin that time forgot. Collectors have often speculated about the exact chain of custody that brought the coin from the Denver Mint to the auction block without a single blemish. Some believe it went directly from the mint press to a sealed bag, then to a Federal Reserve vault, and from there into a bank shipment where it was intercepted by a sharp-eyed collector opening fresh rolls. Others suggest it may have been held by a mint employee from the very beginning, preserved as a curiosity until it eventually entered the market decades later. Without definitive proof, the true story remains part of its mystique. In terms of physical sensation, those few who have handled it describe it as almost surreal. The slightly heavier weight of the copper planchet compared to standard zinc cents is noticeable to a trained hand, and the rich, warm tone of the copper gleams in a way modern pennies rarely do. The doubling on the obverse catches the light at certain angles, giving the impression of a faint shadow running alongside the inscriptions. Every edge, every line, every surface feels intentional, as though the coin had been designed not just for circulation but for display as a work of art. For the current owner, possession of the coin is more than an investment, it's a legacy piece. In interviews, he has hinted at plans to pass it down to future generations, not merely as an asset but as a story to be told within the family. In this sense, The coin's value is not just financial but emotional, serving as a reminder that history can be both vast and small, stretching from the great events of nations to the minute details of a single cent struck in Denver more than 3 decades ago. As years passed, the legend of the 1987 D-copper double-die penny didn't fade, it grew, taking on new dimensions as fresh generations of collectors entered the hobby. The coin became a benchmark for rarity and value in modern U.S. numismatics, a constant reminder that the most incredible treasures can sometimes emerge from the most ordinary places. It was a penny, the coin most people dropped in change jars, ignored in sidewalks, or left rattling in the cup holder of their car, yet it had shattered every preconceived notion about what small change could mean. The effect on the coin market was profound. Dealers who once specialized only in 19th century silver dollars or early copper cents began making room in their display cases for high-grade modern coins. The stigma that modern issues were too common or not worth collecting started to crumble. Prices for pristine late 20th century Lincoln cents began to rise, particularly for mint-state examples and confirmed error coins. Coin roll hunting, the practice of searching through bank rolls for hidden rarities, saw a massive resurgence, driven in no small part by hopeful treasure hunters dreaming of their own million-dollar find. The 1987 D specimen also influenced grading standards. Professional grading companies, faced with more collectors sending in modern coins, refined their criteria for differentiating between MS68, MS69, and the elusive MS70 grades. The flawless condition of this particular penny became a teaching reference, an almost mythical example shown in seminars to illustrate what perfection truly meant under magnification. Graders would point out its razor-sharp rim, the crispness of Lincoln's hair details, and the undisturbed fields, mirror-smooth yet glowing with a soft mint frost that seemed to defy time. The coin also inspired deep research into the Denver Mint's production processes of the late 1980s. Historians pored over mint records, production logs, and employee accounts in an effort to piece together how a copper planchet, no longer standard for cents after 1982, could have found its way into the coining press. Some theorized that a leftover copper blank from earlier years had been accidentally fed into the hopper during a production shift. Others argued that the planchet could have been deliberately set aside by a mint worker as a curiosity, later forgotten until it was struck alongside standard zinc planchets. The truth remains elusive, fueling speculation and discussion in numismatic forums to this day. Beyond the technical and historical aspects, there was the undeniable human fascination. Collectors told and retold stories of near misses, times when someone almost found a similar coin but overlooked it, or when a slightly less rare 1987 D-copper penny turned up in change. Each of these stories added to the atmosphere of possibility, reinforcing the idea that the next great discovery might be sitting in an unassuming roll of pennies at the local bank. In popular culture, the 1987 D penny began to appear as an Easter egg in films, TV shows, and even video games. A famous mystery drama used it as a plot device, with a character's fortune hinging on finding the elusive coin. Numismatic YouTubers crafted elaborate what-if scenarios around its discovery, often mixing historical fact with a dash of entertainment to keep viewers hooked. It became more than just a coin, it became a symbol of luck, persistence, and the thrill of the hunt. The financial side was impossible to ignore. The $260 million auction result stood as a staggering record, and while no other coin had reached such heights, the sale had set a precedent. Wealthy investors began viewing rare coins, even modern ones, as an alternative asset class. Private equity firms quietly approached top-tier collectors, hoping to purchase museum-worthy coins for inclusion in high-value investment portfolios. The 1987 D double-die copper cent was often cited as the catalyst for this new wave of numismatic investment funds, blending the passion of collecting with the strategies of high finance. Yet, for all its glamour, the coin remained humble in its origins. At its core, it was still a 1-cent piece, a small, circular disc of metal measuring 19 millimeters in diameter, bearing the profile of a president who had come from a log cabin and risen to the highest office in the land. That juxtaposition, a penny worth hundreds of millions of dollars, struck a poetic chord. It was a reminder that greatness often emerges from the most modest of beginnings, and that even something as ordinary as pocket change can hold the power to rewrite history. The story of the 1987 D penny's journey from obscurity to legendary status also underscored the unpredictable nature of collecting. For decades, experts had believed that the era of mega rarity in U.S. coins was confined to older issues, the 1804 silver dollar, the 1913 Liberty head nickel, or the 1933 double eagle. The common wisdom was that modern coins, struck in the millions or even billions, could never achieve such breathtaking values. But this copper 1987D, with its doubling error and pristine state, shattered that assumption. It proved that rarity could arise not only from age, but from a perfect storm of factors: composition anomalies, striking errors, limited survival in top condition, and the mystique that comes when so few examples are confirmed. For the collector who discovered it, life changed instantly. One day they were an ordinary hobbyist, casually searching through pocket change, and the next they were negotiating with some of the world's most prestigious auction houses. Offers poured in from private buyers, television appearances were arranged, and the coin itself was insured for a sum so large it required a team of appraisers and security experts. At its public unveiling, the coin sat in a glass case under museum-grade lighting, surrounded by armed guards. People lined up for hours just to glimpse it, not because it was beautiful in a traditional sense, but because it represented possibility, luck, and the strange magic of chance. The excitement also reinvigorated the U.S. Mint's public image. For years, the Mint had been seen as a quiet, bureaucratic institution, producing billions of coins with little fanfare. But the 1987D phenomenon brought fresh attention to minting processes, error detection, and coin composition. The Mint's public tours saw record attendance, with visitors eagerly peering at coining presses and asking detailed questions about planchet feeding and die preparation. While the Mint maintained an official stance of neutrality on the 1987D's origins, it quietly welcomed the renewed public interest in its work. In the numismatic literature, the coin began to inspire entire chapters in error coin guides. Specialists debated the exact nature of its doubled die, whether it was a Class 1 rotation or a Class 4 offset hub doubling. Microscopic photographs of its lettering and date were studied like ancient inscriptions, with enthusiasts noting how the serifs on the 1 and 7 of the date seemed to split cleanly, forming sharp, ghost-like edges. The copper surface, unlike the zinc sense of its era, displayed a rich, reddish-brown luster that deepened over time, a visual testament to its pre-1982 metal composition. Its monetary value, that staggering $260 million, became a cultural talking point. News anchors joked about picking up pennies from the sidewalk just in case. Financial analysts used it in lectures about market perception and the role of rarity in driving value. Even schools began incorporating the story into economics lessons, illustrating supply, demand, and the unpredictable nature of markets. The irony was not lost on anyone. A coin created to be the humblest denomination had become an object worth more than some corporate skyscrapers. At the collector's home, the experience was surreal. Fan letters arrived from around the world, some from fellow coin enthusiasts, others from ordinary people who simply admired the stroke of fortune. Children wrote in crayon, telling how they had started looking through their parents' change jars, hoping to find a magic penny. Retirees described dusting off old coin albums, reigniting a hobby they had set aside decades ago. The coin had become a spark, reigniting passion across generations. Museums and traveling exhibitions competed for the honor of displaying it. At one point, it was featured alongside the Hope Diamond and the original 1933 Double Eagle in a special Treasures of America tour, drawing record-breaking crowds. Each venue reported the same thing: the moment people saw the 1987D under the display lights, conversations would stop. Visitors would lean closer, eyes wide, as if trying to reconcile its small size with its enormous fame. And in that moment, it was no longer just a penny, it was a legend. As the years passed, the story of the 1987D penny became more than a tale about metal and mint marks. It became a parable about how extraordinary things can be hidden in the most ordinary places. It reminded the world that history is not only written in books or displayed in museums, sometimes it's sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting for the right pair of eyes to see it. That little copper coin, born in the Denver Mint decades ago, had traveled through time and countless hands before finding its way to the one person who would recognize its true worth. The $260 million valuation cemented its status as one of the most valuable coins in existence, but in truth, its value had grown beyond numbers. For the collector, it was a life-changing discovery. For the numismatic community, it was a milestone that proved even modern coins could achieve legendary status. And for the millions of people who heard its story, it was a spark of hope that treasure still exists in everyday life. Even now, the 1987D penny rests in a secure, climate-controlled vault when it's not on display, its copper surface glowing faintly under soft museum lighting. People still line up to see it, not because they expect to touch it, but because they want to stand in the presence of a piece of luck, a piece of history, and a piece of proof that sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest stories. So the next time you hold a penny, take a moment. Look at the date. Look at the mint mark. You never know, the next great treasure might be hiding right there, in the palm of your hand, waiting for you to discover it. And just like the 1987 D penny, it could change your life forever.